Donald Trump, when he had his physical, they had his blood pressure, and mine is higher than his. Oh. And the irony is mine is higher because of him.
From the Blue Wave.
We flipped enough seats to take control of the House. We control the House.
To 2020 and beyond. This is the Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM Progress, Channel 127.
And welcome to the show, brothers and sisters. Friday, December 27th. Yes, your MBFF working the holiday week, and I appreciate you spending some time with me here on this holiday week. There's some things to cover. The news is slightly slower. I just want a little update plug. Tomorrow I'll be on Joy Reid's show on MSNBC in the morning, and then back on Reverend Al's show at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on MSNBC as well. So if you're around, barring breaking news, you can catch me tomorrow twice if you'd like. They're both great shows. You should watch me even though I'm not on. But I'm happy to be on both shows tomorrow. So today, it's weird. It's such a slow news day. You can tell from what they're covering, the Home Alone 2 controversy, which we touched on yesterday, Trump being cut out of a movie, which was just ridiculous. He was cut out before he even ran for president. We're not even going to get into it. Even here in the building at Sirius XM, it's quiet. So this gives us the time to talk in depth about two key issues in 2020. And they're not any two issues. They are the issues that in poll after poll that are the top rated issues. One is the economy, and this is of all Americans, the economy, and two, healthcare. Those are the two key issues. And, you know, in the second hour, we have a great guest, Merrill Gosner, who wrote an article. He's an editor for Modern Healthcare, longtime editor. We're going to talk about prescription drug prices, why they're so high, and some of his insight into that. But the first hour, I want to talk about the economy. Not as an economist. We had an economist on about 2 weeks ago. But more in terms of should the 2020 Democrats be taking the fight to Trump on the economy instead of, except for, say, Bernie Sanders and Liz Warren, who do talk about it, the others don't challenge Trump on it, at least not a focal point. Sure, in a long stump speech, they touch on it. But the idea of going right at Trump on what would be his strength, the economy. And, you know, what's very interesting is that on paper, the economy is very good. We have low unemployment, stock market breaking records. But something is amiss here. One of it has to do with Trump himself, and that's his own approval ratings, which don't match up for the economy being the way it is, at least again on paper. And I'm getting at something because if you compare this with Bill Clinton, late 1990s, he's being impeached. The economy is like it is now here in America. Unemployment slightly higher, actually. And his approval ratings were in the mid-60s. In fact, when Bill Clinton got impeached in late 1998, his approval rating jumped to 73%. Think about it. 73% approval rating, Bill Clinton. What does Trump have? With a very similar economy? Well, per 538, I look at the average poll there, I always use that. He has a 42% approval rating as of today. That is the lowest of any modern day president this many days into his presidency. Obama, and this is all per 538, I'm using the same test, same standard here. Per 538, Trump has 42%. Obama had 46% right now. Clinton had 53%. Ronald Reagan had 54%. Even Jimmy Carter and George Herbert Walker Bush had considerably higher approval ratings at this time, a year out from Election Day, than Trump, and both of them lost re-election. And Timber, in case you're not following it, because it's the holidays, Donald Trump's favorite poll, which is Rasmussen, and the reason he loves it is that it oversamples Republicans, so it's not fully accurate, but it gives you a sense of how more Republican-leaning people are viewing things. That's why Trump will tweet out when he gets a 51% approval rating on that one. Well, here's the reality. Before the impeachment stuff really kicked off, earlier in December, before the formal impeachment, Donald Trump had a 52% approval rating. Ian Rasmussen, and he tweeted about that and loved it. Going crazy about it. Now he's been formally impeached. A few weeks later, where is he? He only has a 46% approval rating and 53% disapproval. He is underwater by 7 points in a Republican-leaning poll. And this is actually more important. Forget top lines. Look at strongly approve versus strongly disapprove. If you strongly approve of someone or strongly disapprove, you're probably going to vote because you either love that person or you hate that person. Well, just a few weeks ago, Donald Trump was dead even and Rasmussen strongly approved, strongly disapproved, 39%. Where is he now? 9-point gap, tilting to strongly disapprove, 35% strongly approve, 44% strongly disapprove. So what's going on? In the regular polling, you can say, well, the reason Trump's numbers aren't higher is that Trump has never tried to be the president of the United States of America. That's part of it. He's always wanted to be king of his base. That's what I've said when I'm not being snarky when I say Donald Trump is not my president. He doesn't want to be my president. He doesn't want to be your president. Unless you're a Trump supporter, he doesn't want to be your president. That's why he only tweets about Republican support. That's all he cares about. The rest of us we don't matter. We're props for him to own, owning the libs. And of course, Donald Trump's also dragged down by his bigotry and racism, always defending men who abuse women. In fact, the new Bombshell movie's out about Roger Ailes. I just happened to see it. Really good movie. And there's Roger Ailes, a man where over 20 women came forward to say he sexually harassed them. And after he was fired, 2016, there's Donald Trump defending him. All of that affects Trump's overall numbers. But in the Rasmussen poll, they don't care about his white supremacy. They don't care about his sexism. They've been on board with that. 52% approval rating. But he's been sliding. And I think that's because they're feeling the economy. Because the economy top line numbers are good. But that really means the economy is really good for the wealthy. And it's not trickled down. And at some point, will more of them peel away? Look at Donald Trump tweets almost daily. Stock market, all-time high. Well, technically that's correct. But what percentage of Americans are in the stock market? Slightly over 50% of Americans. And as you might imagine, the percentage of Americans who do own stocks tend to skew upper middle class and wealthy. In fact, the top 10% of income households in America, about 90% of them own stock. So it's really for the upper crust and upper middle class. You've got people investing in mutual funds, but we're talking really invest in the stock market. It's really upper middle class and wealthy. A Gallup poll found certain subgroups don't invest in the stocks, most notably those without a college education, younger Americans, unmarried Americans, African American and Hispanics are less represented in the stock market. So when Trump's talking about the stock market being great, well, that again leaves out 50% of Americans. So what's going on? Bernie Sanders was interviewed by the LA Times yesterday, it was published yesterday, sat down with the editorial board. And they talked about Bernie and Liz Warren talking about economic issues in this article more than any other candidate. And they're right. Bernie said to the LA Times, if I want to go out and get a job today, I can get a job. That's true. But on the other hand, I can't find a job that pays me a wage that allows me to deal with health care and pay my rent and put gas in my car. So the economic crisis we're facing today is not unemployment, it's low wages. And I think other Democrats, and Liz Warren does talk about it, but I think they should make this the cornerstone of the campaign, together with health care. The second issue we'll talk about more in the second hour. The unemployment rate is objectively measured. It's at 3.5%. It's one of the lowest. However, what you can buy with your money, right now, the middle class Americans have the same purchasing power as we had in the 1970s, and that's per Pew analysis. And this year alone, this is a point I've tried to make on the show over and over so that people can talk about it to others. Wage growth this year, by the federal government's own statistics, 3% average worker, 3% wage growth. Inflation, 1.9%. When you deduct wage growth from inflation, what do you get? The average worker is making 1.1% more this year. That's the average worker. Of course, it varies. Some have lost jobs and have less, and some are making much more. But think about that. These are average workers. This is all federal data. Sanders talked about to the LA Times, income inequality has been on the rise since the 1970s. We've heard that. But you want to hear some statistics that back this up? And numbers will not win the argument. I know that. But I want to give us statistics so we're on the same playing field here. This was stunning to me. 44% of all U.S. workers, so nearly one out of two Americans who has a job and is working now qualifies as low wage, earning a median salary of $18,000 a year per 2019 report by the Brookings Institute. This is a nonpartisan above-board group. So nearly 1 out of 2 Americans who's got a full-time job is earning low income, $18,000 a year. Now, in certain parts of the country, you could probably survive on that. Where I live in New York, New Jersey area, you can never. According to the Federal Reserve, again, the federal government, 4 in 10 adults said they would not be able to afford an unexpected $400 expense. So 40% of Americans right now not seeing wage increase, maybe 1%. But if something out of the blue comes up, you get sick and you have higher copays, deductible. The car breaks down, you got a new transmission. Anything over $400, they don't have the money for that. So you put it on your credit card. That's what everyone does. And there's more debt. And you're paying interest. Or if you don't have credit cards, you go to friends or you simply don't pay it and let your debts rise to the point of filing for bankruptcy. In fact, in 2018, we keep hearing these numbers on it. Oh, poverty's gone down. Trump's done so much on it. You know, poverty's gone down a little bit. But in 2018, nearly 40 million Americans are still in poverty. That's 12% of our nation is still in poverty. So you've got wages barely going up after you take out inflation for the average worker. And now you've got a drumbeat of layoffs. And I'm going to read you layoff numbers just from the last 2 or 3 weeks that are getting no national press. And I don't know why the national media doesn't do what I'm going to do right here, is put these together for you to give you a sense something. And I keep saying this. I think we're in a bubble. And the rich are getting richer, completely objectively quantified. The middle class and lower income are not. You know, we're all making ends meet. Your one layoff or slow down from not paying your wages, and a layoff would be catastrophic. Well, here we go. CNBC reported just a few days ago, U.S. Steel delivers unwelcome Christmas surprise to Michigan town, announcing nearly 1,600 workers are going to be laid off in the Great Lakes work facility. As CNBC notes, in the 2016 election, Trump won Michigan by less than 11,000 votes. But, quote, with its factories shedding thousands of jobs, the state scene is up for grabs in the 2020 election. Celadon Group in Indiana, a couple of weeks ago we talked about this. A trucking company, 4,000 employees out of work as the company filed for bankruptcy suddenly. Here's the thing, folks. I know a lot of truckers listen. I love talking to truckers. Trucking companies this year are having a horrific year overall. In 2018, to give you some perspective, 310 trucking companies failed. 310. This year, in the first half of the year alone, 640 trucking companies failed and nearly 20,000 truckers pulled off the road. Just in the first half of this year. We don't have all the numbers for the rest of this year. And part of that is that we are in a manufacturing recession. And that's objectively measured as a real recession, meaning they had a contraction below zero for 2 quarters in a row of that field. Manufacturing is where you need trucks a lot. It's all playing in. It's tying into itself. It's not just truckers. Morgan Stanley, the big financial firm, just announced cutting 2% of its workforce as it prepares for what they expect to be tougher market conditions in 2020. In San Fran Bay Area, I was looking at different articles, just Googling layoffs within the last few weeks to see what's going on. San Francisco Bay Area layoffs. Companies like Uber, Tesla, and WeWork laying off local workers. Even some on the established firms like Oracle are shedding jobs as part of their new strategic priorities that they're going to have. New Orleans, got our friend Lance in New Orleans. Company called the Wall Company, W-A-L-L-E Corp. 147-year labeling company going out of business in February. In Oklahoma, 800 people just laid off at Halliburton. We don't cry for Halliburton, Dick Cheney's company, but people are laid off. Overall, unemployment is rising in parts of the country that are swing states. As the Washington Post reported last month, of the 10 closest states in the last election, Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, North Carolina, all 4 have seen, quote, substantial rises in unemployment over the past year, close quotes. Now, last time we talked about the economy, The Economist, and last month in depth, we talked about consumer confidence going down for 4 months in a row. Well, the new numbers just came out December 20th, and actually uptick. Consumers are a little more confident. That's the top line. That's very good. Here's the reality. Go below the top line. As the report, it's University of Michigan does this report, Quote, most of the December gains in consumer confidence was among upper income households. The wealthy are getting wealthy. They're doing fine. Trump gave them a tax cut and a corporate tax cut, which is translated into corporate bonuses, stock buyback, which means stock prices are going up. And for corporate executives, where their wages and their bonuses are tied to stock prices, are seeing a phenomenal year. But what about the rest of America? Trump claims the economy is the best it's ever been. All the time talks about this. Numbers show that's simply not true. The percentage of Americans working when Trump took office, 62.9%. The percentage of Americans working today, 63.2%. In nearly 3 years, Trump has seen less than a 0.5% increase in the percentage of Americans, known as the labor participation rate, that's gone up. If we have a booming economy, you'd see a lot more. So the same percentage of Americans who are working or looking for a job when Obama left, still today, no difference. GDP, under Obama in 2015, we saw GDP growth, gross domestic product growth, which is just our measure of our output of our economy, measures everything consumer spending and business investments. Under Obama in times in 2015, we had nearly 5% growth. Even under Trump, we had almost 4% growth last year. Where are we now? Last quarter? Under 2%. We're at 1.9%. Trump's not even matching Trump. He's sliding, and things are sliding. There's something amiss. There's something these top 9 numbers are not showing. And we've had so many people call from around the nation, working in car sales, in retail, in truckers. People have emailed me. I have a bunch of responses I posted on Facebook today on Facebook.com, Dean of Radio, and I posted there and said, should the Democrats be talking about the economy more? What are you seeing? And I'll read some responses later. And you know, when you look at the big numbers, the kind of numbers that statistics that Bernie Sanders loves to quote, per Bloomberg News just a few weeks ago, they put here now, and this is stunning. In the last decade, it's not just under Trump, in the last decade, the 1% of the economy, our nation, the 1%, the top 1%, now hold almost as much wealth as the entire middle and upper middle class combined. That's remarkable what is going on in our country. So my view is the Democrats should be taking the fight to Donald Trump on the economy. And you don't have to use numbers like this. The numbers back you up if a reporter asks you about things. But go to the American people and ask them, are you doing better? Trump promised you an economic miracle. Are you feeling this? You know, there was a poll a few weeks ago I talked about on the show. They asked Americans, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? And I had Jamira Burley on. I go, what do you think the answer is? She goes, I bet you 60% of Americans, 60% say they're better off. Nope. About 35% of Americans say they're better off. About 25% said they're worse off. The rest said no change, meaning only a third of Americans are doing better today. But Trump would make you think everyone is doing great. And the reality is, in Trump's world of wealthy people, yeah, they are doing well. That's the people Trump plays golf with at his exclusive country club and private jets, talks about finance with. That's Trump's friends. That's his peers. That's what Trump's about. They're doing great. There's no disputing that. I hope the Democrats talk about, first of all, the precarious situation so many Americans are in. Losing their job, or one expense they don't plan for, and how it's going to trouble them, how it's going to be difficult for them. So one, talk about it. Then second, articulate policy measures to make things better for the middle and lower class. Specifically, one is raising the minimum wage to $15. It's been $7.25 since 2009. If you raise the $15 nationally, immediately it boosts the wages of about 30 million Americans directly and pushes up, incidentally, millions of others, because then if you were making $16 an hour and the new guy or new person's making 15, you're going to have to get a raise. So it helps out overall. We had the economists on talk about DOJ regulations to broaden them out for overtime pay, mandating companies of a certain size paying overtime if you work over 40 hours. That's another way. Another way is a tax cut just for the wealthy and lower income, simply for them, not for the upper class. In fact, the tax increase for them, if they pay their fair share, would be the prescription that I think is the best, but at the very least, a tax cut for the middle class and lower middle class. I think Democrats should be taking the fight to Donald Trump because right now it is almost Donald Trump with the bullhorn. The economy is the greatest, tweets about it, talks about it everywhere you go. It's great, great, great. And Democrats, you got Bernie and Liz Warren talking about it, but not making it a priority. I think on healthcare, they should be making even more of a priority as well. Not just fighting over how to pay for Medicare for all, but in the second hour, we'll talk about that. So, as I put on Facebook and on Twitter, and a lot of people responded, I'm going to read some of their responses. But first, I want to hear from you. Do you think Democrats should be making this a bigger issue? Should they be challenging Donald Trump on the economy being as great as he says it is? Or do you think that's a loser? Do you think too many people are doing well? And how are things, and I've opened this up before, and I'm so curious to hear from people around the country. How is your economy doing? How are you doing? What are you seeing where you live? Are things from a year ago better, the same? Are you optimistic going to 2020, the economy? Or are there signs that you have concerns about where we're going? And this is not rooting against the economy. I'm not rooting for a recession. Absolutely not. But I think the average American worker, not just the wealthy, deserves a raise. And there's ways our policies can do that from the federal government. And Donald Trump and the Republicans will oppose anything that helps the middle class and lower class, of course. They're against that. They will only help the wealthy. And I think it's time the Democrats take the fight to him on this issue and make it clear, yep, Donald Trump's wealthy friends he plays golf with at his private country club, they're doing great. They're doing fabulous. But how are you doing? And the answer is, we know from polling, only 1/3 of Americans say they're doing better. A big swath of Americans not doing better. And I also think talking about these issues that are affecting people, show people you care. That's the first step. Show people you care by talking about issues that are making it difficult for them. Their concerns about putting food on the table and paying the bills if one unexpected bill comes up. But then second, about policies that can help them that resonate as truthful. Not pie in the sky. Raising the minimum wage to $15 over time is not pie in the sky. It's simple. And you know it's going to help. Changing DOJ, Department of Labor regulations to guarantee 40 hours a week and over for certain size companies have to give you overtime. That's another thing. I think you can also talk about more Bernie type of things, but those seem more way out there aspirational, about requiring companies to pay more taxes, to making sure that if a company has a certain percentage of profit in a year, that they give back to their employees who work there, all of the from the line employees all the way up to the top. That might be a harder sell. But in time, we're going to get to that point because this income inequality gap is causing a great deal of frustration in this country. That's how Trump got resonance with certain Americans. And that's why, oddly enough, and I did not understand in 2016, I'm going to be blunt, I did not understand how some people who had liked Bernie Sanders then went to like Trump. Because all I saw with Trump was a con man who was a white supremacist and a bigot and sexist. And I'm like, if you like Bernie, now you like Trump. You never understood Bernie. I now get why those people like Bernie. It was the economic message. They felt no one's talked to them before. No one's addressed their struggle. And no one's addressed the reality that you work hard, you do everything you're asked, you work really hard, you're not getting a raise, and you see stories of Trump and the wealthy getting wealthier and wealthier. And there's a point in time where it becomes frustrating and you get angry about it. And then you vote for a Trump. Because you don't care if the system gets torn down or destroyed because the system's not work for you. And it is truly rigged, as Bernie Sanders talks about it. So forget the policy, like that kind of stuff. What are you seeing? I'd love to hear what you're seeing. And if it's going fine, this is not a debate. This is really trying to get fact gathering for listeners. How is the economy? How is your industry? What are you hearing from people? Are there concerns? And then secondly, should Democrats, if you're seeing concerns, be taking the fight to Donald Trump on this issue? 866-997-4748. Love to hear from you right back.
Progressive values are the best of American values, and we need to keep fighting for them to save our